All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Emily. Those of you who don't know me, I work in marketing at Zipline, and I wanted to welcome you guys to our latest webinar we're calling Retail Resilience in Turbulent Times. 5 principles for flawless execution. And with me here today is the one and only Melissa Wong, or Mel
Right.
as we call her, our CEO and co-founder of Zipline. Also the author of the book, the best-selling book, Stores Don't Suck. She's here today to walk us through these 5 principles. We're going to also talk about some case studies that align with the principles as well. So we've got a lot in store for y'all. So let's just go ahead
In
and
store.
kick it off. In store, I
Pun
know.
intended. Or maybe not
Pun.
intended.
No, it's always intended. Always intended. So Mel, why don't you start us off? And I know that, obviously store execution is our thing at Zipline. It's what we talk about, but it is particularly personal to you. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about your background and why you're so passionate about store execution.
Yeah. As you know, or as you know, many people do know, I actually worked in retail for over a decade for a Fortune 500 retailer, very high volume, over 1,000 stores. And it was just really hard to get stores to do the thing. And the reason it's so personal is that we were trying a lot of things in headquarters in order to turn around the brand through those 10 years. And the field was also trying a lot of new things. And they were also struggling despite kind of like the lack of effort that we put in headquarters to make it easier for stores. And so through the years, through 10 years, specifically focused on store operations and store communications, I'd be traveling stores. I'd be asking them if they understood the strategy or the target customer. And there was just a lot of kind of blank looks and sometimes a lack of accountability. And through many conversations and many focus groups, I realized it wasn't actually, a lack of ill intent from the store's perspective. Like people were trying the best that they could, right, with what they had, but they just weren't set up for success. And so, as I look at where we are today with like bankruptcies and uncertainties, tariffs, right? It's like the pendulum is just swinging wildly. And I think everyone's getting rocked, right? From headquarters in terms of changing different strategies, looking at the business in different ways, optimizing margin, to the poor store teams that are getting whiplashed, right? And so when you
Yeah.
think about all of this chaos that's, you know, kind of like reverberating throughout the organization, I think that's why we see, throughout the industry, an average of only 29% execution. So only 29% of your stores on average are actually able to execute what people are asking them to do to the standard of what good looks like. So when we think about the role of communication in an organization, what's really unique about it is that everything going into a store is basically, through communication. It's like the train tracks that bring everything into store. And if that's broken, nothing gets done. It's totally chaotic. It's time consuming. It's inefficient. Um, and that's where, when we look at where we are today, it's really important to get it right.
Yeah, and it's only getting worse, right? We like to put this image up sometimes when we do presentations to other retailers at Zipline, because it really does resonate, that feeling of like this whole mush of stuff coming from HQ down to stores. What's the priority? What takes precedence? You're asking these store teams to do so much more than we were even just 5, 10 years
Yeah.
ago. And now, like you said, in this moment we're at, with all of the uncertainty going on in the news, all of the tariffs, all of this like consolidation and craziness, leadership changes, even just in the retail sector
Yeah.
alone in the past couple of months. It's a lot, but we also believe it's not stores' fault. They want to do a good job. They're just not set up for success, and that's why
And
Zipline was born.
that's why we
Yeah.
exist. And it's funny that you talk about that too. I mean, I just think that when you look at the pace of retail, a lot, a while back, we used to say like, oh, it's going to slow down in a couple of years. And I think at this point, we know not going to slow down.
No, never.
Like the pace of change it's like here to stay, and it's going to get, it's going to actually get faster because of the role of AI, right? Because of changing customer expectations, because of this connected commerce experience and kind of like frictionless experience that we want customers to have at every touch point of the brand. And so change is here to stay and it's getting faster. And then the question is, how do you set everyone up for success and really try to like calm the chaos as much as possible and make sure that people are as strategically oriented and set up for success as possible?
Yeah, this so they can make those decisions in the moment because we don't have time. So obviously Zipline is the product, the platform, the software that was born
Mhm.
out of this frustration. Zipline's been around for, oh gosh, almost
Over
over 10
10
years, 10 years
years.
now. But Zipline, I like to tell people Zipline is more than just a software platform. There's all
Mhm.
these wonderful things in it, as some people on the webinar know. Some we have some customers on the webinar today. We've got internal comms, task management, and surveys and audits, but it's more than just software. I think one of the things I personally love about Zipline is how we have a really unique philosophy around what drives better store execution, right? And the way that communication should work in an organization,
Totally.
which is why
Totally.
you took that and wrote a
Yeah,
book.
I mean, I think it's like actually, I mean, I think it's actually like a very, stores are very unique, right? Because
Yeah,
it's very interruption driven. There's like a very diverse background and there's a very interesting workflow that happens. It's not like when you sit at your desk and you do your job and you have to close out like one project after another, everyone has to hand the baton from one person to the next. So I think, when I reflect back on really where the fall down pieces happened, it is in kind of like the structure of how frontline teams and store teams are set up. So, the way that Zipline is set up is to account for this kind of like shared responsibility to give visibility into all of the things to make sure that the organization can move better, faster together. Um, but it's hard to do. And I think why we've been successful is that we have a philosophy for, how to set everyone up for success. And we also mirror a lot of the manual things that happen in store and we just automate it, right? And we just make it
yeah,
easier and we give teams tools and a way that they can work in conjunction with a way that headquarters can work to bring it all together to make sure that the work actually happens in a way that makes people feel engaged behind the brand.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about Stores Don't Suck,
Oh,
the
fun.
book.
Okay. So Jeremy Baker, my co-founder, and I wrote Stores Don't Suck. Controversial title at the time,
I know.
but
I mean, you weren't. Some of us
I
liked the
was like
title
on that.
more than
Yeah,
others.
totally.
I think
Because
it's fun. I think
it
it's
is
fun. We
fun.
put
It is
we put it on a billboard in Times Square. That was like one of the highlights of my career. That was super fun.
It
Love
is
it.
fun. And it's a very like it's like eye-catching title and it conveys what we want to say, right? Just like that, stores are under a lot of pressure. Sometimes they're left behind in the digital transformation movements and transformations. And yeah, it's how we set them up for success depends on like the results that we ultimately see come from stores. And
Yeah.
so, as I've been doing a lot of road shows around the book. I think this is a picture from London a couple weeks ago.
London.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Um,
it's been an amazing success. And I think people, especially now, are interested in how do we, help enable our teams to be more agile and informed and be able to prioritize their work easier because we're just kind of all of us are working at this neck breaking speed. And we need to figure out how to work better together. So I think like what's really interesting about this time right now is that everything's changing, right?
mhm.
The way that consumer shop are changing, but also the macro environment. And so when you look at the labor hours and the cost of labor right now, when you look at the focus on margin, particularly because of tariffs, right? The focus on helping the bottom line and being the most efficient and as effective as possible, there's a lot of pressure, right? And it's not just, ongoing pressure on things that like peak season or holiday. Things are changing by the moment, and you have to be more agile, and you have to have all of the teams on the same page, because you're literally going to be, going from strategy A to B to C, maybe back to like, A point two. And to truly make sure that that strategy is successful, everyone needs to be doing it together, which is, in part the role that communication and also like task management, even though I don't like the word task management, come into play. It's about information organization and
Yeah.
prioritization.
Yeah, it's like, it used to just be, I mean, I remember when I worked in retail, you had plan A and then you had your contingency. And now it's like you need the contingency for the contingency for the contingency. And then you almost have to over prepare everybody for plan A, B, C, D, and then let them know last minute we're going to plan A. Oh, no, plan B. Like there's so many different ways things could fall out, um, just on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
And that the
So much
retailers
more.
who are the retailers who are going to succeed and win are going to be the ones who can stay nimble. And the only way to do that is to make sure everybody is on the same page and
Yes,
getting the
context.
communication. Yeah. I think one of the great things about Stores Don't Suck is that, even though it was written a couple of years ago, still very, very relevant today. These principles are very much like core basic principles. And we felt like this was a great opportunity to revisit the principles through fresh eyes, and kind of do it while also recognizing some of the retailers that we're lucky enough to work with on a day-to-day basis at Zipline. I think one of the things you always say, Mel, that I love is this idea of like all boats rising together, right? Like retail is such a tough industry, and we really believe at Zipline in fostering community and learning
Mhm.
from each other. I think how many we work with over 150 brands now, which is crazy. And from where you sit, you get to see a lot of different strategies come to life.
Yeah.
And so I think today we'll be able to share some of the principles from Stores Don't Suck alongside some of the customer stories, which is super exciting. I do want to say some of the names might have been changed because we are all about respecting people's privacy here at Zipline. But our hope is that, those of you joining us live right now, and also those of you who might be watching the recording in the future, maybe you see your own organization or some challenges that your brand is going through reflected in one or more of these case studies, and you just come away a little bit more informed or inspired, or maybe you just feel a little less alone.
Yeah. No need to struggle alone. We're all in
Yeah,
it together.
exactly. We're all in it together. So let's get right to it. We have a lot to cover. So Mel, talk to me about principle number one: create an aligned organization. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, alignment seems like such a basic thing, but I think it is so critical, especially now and looking at retail resilience, right? Um, it is so incredibly hard to have everyone pointed in the same direction, understanding the strategy, executing flawlessly, and then being able to do it again in a moment's notice, right? And when I think about alignment, there are actually like two types of alignment that surface to the top in terms of being important. One is really like HQ alignment, so making sure ensuring that different headquarters departments are aligned and have visibility into each other's work and also what the stores are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
To make sure that everyone is kind of like going in the same direction. We've seen examples of headquarters misalignment, for example, with like a brand sending out a contest to two different departments. Were sending out a contest around, with overlapping same times to the stores because the two different departments didn't have visibility into what the stores were doing, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think about, creating alignment between departments, it's giving visibility. into like the end result, the goal rate from a store's perspective. That also helps headquarters departments work backwards and work kind of like plan to work a little bit better. And then it's visibility into the priorities between those two departments. So we do help with that through, upper field digest as well. And sometimes organizations actually send them out to the entire company, right? Just to provide a reminder of what store's scope rate is. And then second, when I think about alignment, it really is clarity through the field organization, right? Through all levels, so that everyone understands what the priorities are. And something that a district manager is saying is it doesn't differ from something that headquarters is saying, or pilot stores aren't getting confused from full fleet stores. And so, when I look at also one of the best examples and the gold standard of a brand that has alignment both through field organizations as well as across the organization, Warby Parker really stands out for me, right? So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just have this like amazing unified experience across brick and mortar, across their app, across, all touch points. The service behaviors are aligned to support the customer experience that they aspire to achieve. And they did a really good job with creating and rolling out an internal guiding principle, which they really call one frame of mind, right?
This is also, love a good pun in retail, right?
Totally. And one of the great things about Warby's initiative was like, you know, bringing everything into one platform,
Yeah.
right? And coupling the practical execution of what needs to get done with the context of, what they were doing. So it's giving, creating alignment in terms of like the overall direction. And making sure that all employee-facing comms and asks and policies and resources were in one place, not just for their retail teams, but also their CX teams, right? Their customer-facing teams, so that there's one frame of mind, but there's also like one voice, and everyone's kind of like marching, reading from the same source of truth, so there isn't conflicting direction or mixed signals to customers around the experience or the strategy.
For sure. And I think, two things stand out to me about Warby. One is, like you said, that cohesion, as a customer, you really feel the brand come through in every touch point very authentically. And so it does feel, you can feel that one voice that you're talking about as a customer. And the other thing that I think is really impressive about Warby is just their growth. Um, we've been partners, Zipline's been partners with Warby for several years now, and year over year, they open new stores. Their fleet is constantly growing. And to be able to do that, to expand your business and, and your employee count, but preserve that alignment and that unity and that single brand voice is really, really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like it speaks to what we're seeing today, right? In terms of being able to change and grow and be resilient. Like when the organization is aligned, you can go much faster, much more effectively, and cost effectively, right? You're able to like scale what's working much, much better, which is way more efficient. So I think that's a great testament to the brand.
Yeah. And so you did speak with Warby recently on stage at NRF. Super fun session there. We have a little QR code for those of you who are on the webinar. If you want to scan it, that'll take you to a recording of that session, actually, where Sasha, who's there with Mel, walks through that strategy in detail. Really cool stuff that I think every retailer could benefit from. All right, let's move on to principle number 2. I love this one because it's very tactical. And I like tactical things. Talk to me about intent-based communication channels. What is that?
Yeah, so when we look at the organization, there are really, you know, 4 types of communication and then like learning, right? Not all communication is equal. So there's like
Mm-hmm.
nice to know information, which could be like letters from the president, right? There's need to do information, there's policies and procedures, there's dialogue, discussion, debate, recognition. And different people need these different types of communication at different times, right? And so if you mix them all up into one bucket, it's really confusing and people don't know where to go to get the information they need. So by separating out these different communication channels out, it reduces noise, it saves time, it increases efficiency, payroll. I mean, there's some really measurable ROI that you can get through making sure that the types of communication are clear and people know where they need to go to get the information they need. I mean, the worst case scenario is, you're asking someone to do, it's the end of the quarter, you're asking stores to follow the strategy. Some of the stores follow, a suggestion made by like a DM in a chat channel, and they think that's the corporate directive when actually it's not, right? And
Yeah.
so you just want to be intentional about where you put communication and what it's intended for.
Yeah. And then once you are clear about where to go for what type of communication, like you said, suddenly the time, just the sheer number of minutes that an average employee is spending searching for a
Mhm.
particular directive or a change goes down. And that
Yeah.
that impacts the bottom line as well, just in terms
Yeah.
of that payroll efficiency is so
Yeah.
big.
So I think we typically see two examples where a lot of communication is jumbled into one. So one, of
Mm-hmm.
course, is the biweekly PDF with like 30 pages, right? Where you have like celebrations and pullbacks and visual resets and product knowledge and
And
store
it's
best
gorgeous, and it
practices.
took you hours to do it in Adobe InDesign, and yet it is a
Hard
beast. Yeah.
to figure out, right? And you're extracting notes and you have like stickies and you're trying to, search through it and it's hard, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then during COVID, we really saw a real need and desire to reach the front line. And I think that created a more digital example of this, like, you know, compressed PDF. And I like to think of it as like the scroll of doom, where it's more of like a Facebook interface, right? But then you have like resources, and then you have like suggestions and celebrations, and then you have a product pullback, and then you have a planogram, maybe from a visual person that is suggesting something or adding on to something. But people are just confused about the context of the work and like what what type of communication is for. Is this a suggestion? How should I be thinking about this? Is this a policy and procedure, right? Is this more around recognition? And I think because payroll is so compressed in
Mm-hmm.
stores, we need to be really diligent about outlining for teams like, hey, this is a nice to know. Get to it when you have some time. This is I need to do. The expectation is that this is completed by the end of the day, right? This is a policy and procedure or resource. Like when you need to, it's there for you. And hey, see something cool. Customers are coming in, asking around certain colors from it or sharing some insight into the brand, like you might want to share it in a channel more based around communication.
And I think you're so right. This is we actually didn't pull a single case study for this particular one because there are so many. We see this so often at Zipline, especially like you said, after COVID, there was this explosion of these just the efforts to get communication down to the front line. The people who are closest to the employees typically don't have email addresses, and it was really well intentioned. I think everybody wanted this communication to feel like the social apps that so many of those employees are already familiar with. But it turns out, a news feed is actually not an effective means of communication for a lot of the things that retailers rely on to bring their brand to life every day in stores. And so we actually do work with a lot of customers who come to us kind of, I guess, extracting or reverse engineering that news feed, so to speak, into different places that do exist within the Zipline platform, like that nice to know communication, the reference material, the tasks, obviously, the dialogue, discussion, and debate. All of that exists within one platform.
Mhm.
But I will say that you don't have to have Zipline to be able to do this. You know, if you have that giant scroll of doom or the PDF newsletter of doom, you can begin to parse out your communication into these intent-based channels. With you don't have to use a single platform. Obviously it's easier if you do, but you know, you just all it takes is being very explicit about, you know, mapping your channels and saying this channel is for this type of communication and here's when you are expected to go into it. Maybe you need to log in every day, maybe you need to log in as needed, maybe you need to log in at the beginning of your shift, the end of your shift, right? Starting to really outline the intention of each channel and what it's used for can just create a lot of clarity for store teams.
So I think the key piece is really how do you get this ease of use, right? So that's where the Facebook feed and the social media piece is really helpful. How do you get this like intuitive, easy to use feel, right? But have it over different intent-based communication channels instead of just smushing it into one, right? So just like marrying those two things together.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So this is a big one. Lots to think about here, but I think again, lots of different approaches you can take to be able to start to build intent-based communication channels at your own organization. Which brings us to the next principle, which is send the right message at the right time. Where does this? What's the origins of this principle, Melissa? Where does this come from, and why is it important for driving execution?
Yeah. So I think, many times retailers are sending out a weekly PDF with information to stores. But honestly, it doesn't match the pace of business, right? It also doesn't match the expectations of the store teams in getting information in bite-sized pieces, right? So that they can retain, digest, and action off of that information. And so, what we have seen a lot of the time for a lot of the Zipline customers is that people begin on this weekly cadence. The reason is because store teams know or are supposed to know this is when the big communication bundle drops. However, updates are happening so frequently on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes the stores don't even understand that it is supposed to be weekly. And so what we've done is that we've really cracked that model and say, okay, when we think about both the pace of business and getting store teams into the right behaviors, we should be breaking down that weekly communication into more of a daily bundle so that in the beginning of the day, team members, they'll log in, they know every day they're going to see the communication in the morning that they need to read. They're going to see the tasks that they need to do. And they can go about their day-to-day work having confidence that they have what they need, right? And so it's this routine of day in, day out, knowing that when I clock in, I'm going to see the communication. At Zipline, we have a concept called the day sheet, where all of the tasks are automatically kind of like, listed out for you on the day that they're due. And then you can just go through those pieces of work effortlessly. So like one of the brands said, it's like having a miniature admin, right? But it is really around striking this flow of business so that people know what to expect, so that when the unexpected does happen, people know it's unexpected. It's out of the ordinary. It's business moving, right? And they can better prioritize and contextualize the change within the normal rhythm of business versus everything feeling like so chaotic.
And I think we have many retailers have seen success switching to this concept of what we call daily bundles. I think driving that behavior of checking, your tasks for the day at the beginning of your shift and then checking in again at the end of your shift and kind of updating, right? It's a very digestible, repeatable behavior. And then we've had customers and partners who have actually seen really incredible business results as a result of this behavior change, right? Can you talk about that?
Totally, totally. That's such a good point. So one retailer was going from a weekly cadence of communication, where stores were reading the things like noting down when it needed to happen, to more of a daily communication flow. All of the tasks were on this day sheet, and they were making a lot of changes. It was during peak season. They said that when they began to make that change and through the day sheet, they saw 92% execution for next day work, which is
Oh,
unheard
wow.
of, right? So it's like if you can get into this flow where you know, like every day, like this is the rhythm of business. All of the things that I need to do are going to be on this task list, right? That gets updated daily. The next day, you're going to go in, you're going to see something new, and it's just going to be within the rhythm of business. And that's one example of one thing. But if you take a look about all of the moving pieces with supply chains and promos and like discounting that we're trying to navigate through now, if you can get all of those right, it has a material impact on the business.
Well, and then just think about how much faster you can move too. It used to be that there was sort of this unwritten rule that you would have to give your stores at least a 2 weeks heads up to do anything, right? And now I know there are certain things where you absolutely do legally need to give a 2 weeks heads up because it's going to impact staffing and stuff. So, floor sets, whatever. But I mean, we're talking like change a sign, right? Flip a poster in the window. Oh, we need to give them 2 weeks heads up, because there were so many ways for that to go wrong and so many layers of communication and places it could be. Like it just, that was the only way you could have certainty that something that you would need your stores to do to move the business forward, change a price maybe, would actually get done. And to go from that 2 week lead time to not even 24-hour lead time, to be able to say with certainty, okay, it's Tuesday and we're reading the business and we really need teams to, flip, I don't know, flip from the red signs to the blue signs, right? And that sounds like a stupid example, but it's not, because that happens in
Because it's
retail.
real.
To be able to then make that decision midday Tuesday and know with certainty that it will be executed before store open the very next day, Wednesday. I mean, and then think about the impact then to sell through and margin and extrapolate that. And that's one tiny little change in a series of, a year's worth of business. It's just,
Mhm.
it completely transforms
It's like
how you can run your stores. Yeah.
it's like retail in real time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like suddenly you can compete with, because, an e-commerce site, you can do that with the click of a button. The
Totally.
challenge with brick and mortar has always been, how do you compete? And once you build that sort of daily rhythm into, your associates, you can really go so much faster, which is so key to driving the business.
Daily rhythm and having that accountability through the visibility, right? So
Yes. Yes. Yeah, being able to see exactly who's done what in real time, for sure. Which brings us to the next principle, which is all about empowering the workforce. Talk to me about principle number 4 and some of the ways that we've seen this come to life through customers that we've worked with recently.
yeah, so I mean, I think one of the biggest things around how we think about store teams at Zipline is we believe that your employees want to work for your brand, right? There's something that resonates with them, or there's something that you can harness if you communicate and engage them in a meaningful way. And what I mean by that isn't like just a shiny interface or isn't just gamification, but it's really making people feel connected to their work, right? And it makes them feel like they're all part of something bigger, whether it's part of a strategy, whether it is, a customer experience, and how can we help enable that perspective so that people truly feel empowered, right? It's not just engaged, it's really about like enrolled and empowered. And so you see that throughout, our entire product in terms of how we connect the dots from a strategy or a message in terms of like what people need to know and then what need to do. And you also see that in a bigger, play out in a bigger way when you look at, one customer in particular was using a concept that we call hubs, right, where you can
Hmm.
combine messages and then you combine resources. We actually won a Fast Company innovation award for that. We rolled it
Yeah.
out during COVID, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
World changing ideas or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
Fast Company's world changing ideas because I think it really was around, the theme of empowering people to the best of their ability to have context to make the best decisions possible for the business. And if you can build, ongoing business updates with the materials and resources, right? And connect the what with the why and the how, people become better business owners. And that's really when we look at empowering the workforce, it's not just about feeling good, which we definitely do, but it's more than that. It's helping people make better decisions for the business, which then ultimately also helps drive business results, and it makes them feel like they matter more,
Yeah.
right? And that which also helps with retention. So I think ideally we want our store managers to feel like they can run it like they own it, like within certain guardrails, and empowering your teams and recognizing that they can be the best brand ambassadors for customers, right? That they see and talk with customers. They see what's happening every day in stores. They're talking with customers. They can be that feedback conduit up to headquarters, letting people know, like the first ears and eyes when customers are saying, this fits a little bit funky. This color's a little bit off. So how do you empower people to bring ideas to the forefront and not feel like they're just a cog in the machine, and what they're seeing and hearing from the customer base doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, it's to me, it's all about giving your teams context into, like you said, why are we being asked to do these things? Why are we putting this product here? Why are we running this promotion now? Being really transparent with that context and doing it in a way that invites them into the brand, like you said, because they work for you, because they love your brand. We have some customers who are really great at bringing their brand to life through the Zipline platform, really creating almost like a marketing campaign, but for their internal audience, for their employee audience,
Mhm.
that helps get that buy-in. And then serves up all the context they need, the direction, but also the why behind the direction, so that those employees can run it like they own it when they need to. And I think just giving
Mhm.
everybody the support and foundation so they can make those little decisions in the moment, because no two stores are alike, no two teams are alike. Making sure that your teams have that context is going to help drive better results in the end. It's giving those guardrails so that your brand vision's coming to life, and it's doing it through your employees instead of like despite your
Yeah,
employees, I guess. Yeah.
totally.
Um, One last principle that we have, and this is sort of the cherry on top, right? So all of these are laddering up to one another, right? You start with that clear alignment of where you're going. You make sure that people know exactly where to go with those intent-based communication channels, get them in a rhythm so they're able to ingest that communication on a regular basis without feeling overwhelmed, without having stuff flow through the cracks, and then giving them through that communication this sense of content and ownership. But it all falls flat if you don't measure the execution. So number 5 is measure the execution. Talk to me about the importance of this principle.
So I think there are like two key pieces around measuring the execution. One is really around visibility
Mm-hmm.
and accountability. And it was really one of our brands where we're like, yes, you said it the most amazing way. And we kind of like adopted the saying that, sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Mm.
And being able to see what's being done and what hasn't, who is on point for what, really drives better accountability, and the accountability drives better results. Um, but I think, beyond that visibility into readership, ownership, execution, there's a broader piece around measuring execution from a business lens, and that's really, does this strategy work or not, right? So if you're making last minute business changes and there's always the question, did the stores do the thing? How many of the stores did the thing, right? Is the recent marketing changes the reason why there's been more traffic to stores, or because the stores put up the marketing, or maybe stores didn't put up the marketing because it was last minute and it was weather related. And so when I think about the potential about measuring the execution, it's really looking at sales, traffic, execution, and being able to have a better understanding around the levers of the business and if the decisions you're making are the right one or not in conjunction with execution.
Yeah, that's such a good point because store execution in and of itself doesn't necessarily improve your business. Like
No,
just make it like if you could have the worst strategies ever and you could have 100% store execution and just drive your business into the ground. So going back to that idea of like, how can we get a brick and mortar fleet to function more like, an e-commerce site? How can we get them? How can we test and respond? If you can marry that execution data with that real-time sales data, or other data in your business, then you can start to see like, okay, we tried that and it went up. Oh, we tried that and it
exactly.
went down. But if you don't know if you're actually trying it or not, then what? Yeah, what good is it? Exactly.
90% execution versus 20% execution makes a big difference on if the
It
strategy is
does.
working or not, right? So, but the most important thing is to know, right?
Yeah.
And to improve and build off of it. So that
Um,
that
you know,
information is key.
what's really interesting to me with this one is that when I think about brands we work with that are very good about measuring execution, I think of grocery brands,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very different than specialty retail. Definitely a more, complex business, lots of different departments, lots of moving parts, but also very compliance driven. Like you don't care about the temperature of your t-shirt when you buy it, but you sure as heck care about the temperature of your milk. And so there's a lot of different things that have to be tracked, and you can't take shortcuts when you're selling fresh food, right?
Ooh.
So we have a lot of success stories from grocery actually when it comes to being able to measure execution. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, talking about, I mean, you mentioned perishable food, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, there's a lot involved with that. There's a lot of like safety, there's a lot of temperature measuring, also like brand, your customers really will have, uh, good or bad experience based off of, if you don't get something in hot food right. But it
Mm-hmm.
can be a category winner, right? As people are trying to save time.
Well,
Um,
and for grocers in particular, prepared foods is like a huge differentiator right now. And one of the ways that grocery stores are creating a differentiated experience to stand out from the competition.
Totally. It makes sense, right? We're all time compressed while trying to do personally more with less, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so the one grocery example that I can pick particularly comes to mind is a grocery store was struggling with inconsistent setup execution for the hot food stand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they actually began requiring photo evidence of task completion. And that did a couple things. So one, um, that visibility in terms of photo task completion drove better accountability, not just to the headquarters team, but actually through the field, right? So
Mm.
store managers were having more conversations with their district managers. There was more coaching on a one-on-one basis. And ultimately, actually, better execution drove better sales, right? They resulted in a 15% sales lift just for that one thing, right?
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And so like if you think about, you know, now that they have that behavior like going and they can work on other parts of their business too, you can see material lift throughout the business. If you lay down those, the visibility, driving accountability, you look at the execution, you get the behavior like rolling, and then you can look at the next area of the business or next, 10 areas of the business that you can really begin to optimize.
And, I think this is an area too where technology has really helped retail evolve, just in terms of how stores are held accountable and managed. And if you think like, years ago, you would need a district manager with a paper checklist going in and looking with their own eyes to make sure that these stands are set up correctly. And now with something like photo tasking, within seconds, you can pull up, here's a sort of like cheat sheet of how my district's doing. I can pinpoint immediately which ones need help based on just looking at the photos. So not only does that increase the task execution, it also increases the speed of business. People can be in like 10 places at once. So like
Totally.
you said, that this kind of feeds on itself. And for me, like 15% increase in sales is huge. That's like one promotion one time out of the year.
Huge.
Extrapolate that across all the stores in the fleet all year long. I mean, that's a game changer for sure. And it really proves that communication is key to the bottom line. 100%. One last thing, one last parting gift for those of you who are either with us live right now or have registered for the webinar and are watching the recording later. We have distilled all of these case studies and more into a handy dandy ebook, which will be landing in your inbox shortly. So thank you so much. That's our little gift to all of you for registering. And again, as a reminder, these are stories about Zipline customers that we've worked with in the past, but you don't have to have Zipline to be able to put any of these principles into practice. You can do this with the other tools out there. So there's really nothing standing in your way. If you're interested, Stores Don't Suck is available on Amazon, or you know what, just shoot me and Mel an email and we might drop a free copy in the mail for you. So as always, thank you all so much. And thank you, Mel, so much
Thank
for your
you.
time and for joining and sharing your insights with all of us. We hope that all of you learned something new today, maybe saw one of your brands reflected in some of these challenges we discussed.
Or solutions and
Or
solutions.
solutions, right? Right. And we hope you guys will join us next time for our next webinar to, just further lift up the retail community. We're here for all of you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.